This is the Entertainment Execution Layer Podcast, episode number 6, and today I will be talking about Stephen King's Silver Bullet. Silver Bullet was a 1985 horror thriller based on Stephen King's novella Cycle of the Werewolf. It starred, despite the fact that this is probably one of the best werewolf movies ever made, it was not a critical success. However, it is now considered a cult classic. The movie centers around a wheelchair-bound kid named Marty Kozlov, played by Corey Haim, his sister, played by Megan Follows, and his uncle, played by Gary Busey. There's also a variety of characters throughout town that is also centered in this film. Three that come to mind is the local priest, played by Everett McGill, the town rabble-rouser Andy, who pretty much starts a lynch mob, played by Bill Smitrovich, and the town do-nothing sheriff, played by Terry O'Quinn, Sheriff Haller. The mystery and shit hits the fan almost immediately with the murder of the town drunk who ends up getting decapitated by the werewolf. And now we're off. Terror and paranoia within the town continues to grow and grow with each full moon when the werewolf claims a new victim. One of the victims happens to be a teenager named Brady Kincaid. And this is what kickstarts a group of vigilantes to go into the woods and track down the psychopathic killer who they don't know is actually a werewolf. Unfortunately, for a few members of this group, they will find out the hard way as they get brutally attacked and murdered by the beast. This brutal transaction of carnage, along with the other string of murders, leads the town to cancel the 4th of July fireworks. The Kozlovs decide to have their own 4th of July party themselves, and this is where Marty, played by Corey Haim, gets the Silver Bullet. It's pretty much a souped-up wheelchair that looks like a 3-wheel motorcycle, painted in silver. His uncle also gives him a whole bag of fireworks to celebrate the 4th of July night. And this is where young Marty meets the werewolf for the very first time as he shoots a rocket into the beast's eye. And the following morning, he enlists his sister to help him out to try and find out who the werewolf actually is. And by the way, up until this point, the brother and sister were pretty much fire and ice relationship-wise. Now, in this section, I am not going to give the identity of the werewolf away. Let's just say that young Jane Kozlov spends the entire day trying to track down who this werewolf might be, and it's not until the very end of the day where she actually finds out who the werewolf really is. And then young Andy and Jane spend the next probably 15-20 minutes of the film harassing the identity of the person who the werewolf actually is. And then things get even better when they get their Uncle Red, played by Gary Busey, involved in this situation as well. He is only semi-convinced, however, that something is actually going on. And the only reason he gets convinced is because of some evidence that happens to have popped up, including the paint on the Silver Bullet, which was involved in a hit-and-run incident the day prior to Red getting involved in this situation. Red goes to the cops, the sheriff goes to check things out, and he is never seen again. So, under the realization that the werewolf will be coming after them during the next full moon, Marty and Jane has their Uncle Red go to a gunsmith to melt down their silver cross and silver medallion to make a silver bullet. The next full moon happens to fall on a Halloween night, and while Red comes up with a plan to get Marty and Jane's parents out of town for that special occasion. The full moon comes, the werewolf comes, a brutal battle happens, and the werewolf is left dead with a silver bullet going right through his eye. And thus, the terror of Tarker's Mills that took place in 1976 finally comes to an end. production note. Though Silver Bullet took place in Maine, the filming location was in Wilmington, North Carolina. And it took 2.5 months to complete, finishing just before Christmas. And another goofy thing that happened was the werewolf itself. It didn't look like a wolf, it didn't look like a werewolf, it looked more like a black bear, which a lot of people didn't like. In fact, it was almost completely panned. Don Coscarelli, the director of the Phantasm series, was the original director for this film, but he dropped out, resigned from the directing spot, and was replaced by Dan Attias. Gary Busey ad-libbed all his lines, and a modern dancer was hired to do the stunts for the werewolf, but was fired because his performance was just not up to snuff. The film was released by Paramount Pictures in 1985, and the movie ultimately grossed just over $12 million at the box office. Paramount released a DVD version in 2002, and on Blu-ray in Germany in 2017, and Australia in 2018. That release was under Umbrella Entertainment. Scream Factory did a Blu-ray release on December 17th, 2019. As for the reception, Rotten Tomatoes has Silver Bullet under the approval rating of 48%, based on just 21 reviews. Shockingly, Roger Ebert gave this film a 3 out of 4 stars. Vincent Canby of the New York Times dismissed the film as very low-grade Stephen King fiction, and thought the werewolf looked less like a wolfman, Smokey Bear, with a terrible hangover, whatever that fucking means. So, as you can see, this film was not the best critically acclaimed film out there. Should have been? No. Was this the best movie ever made? No. Was this the worst movie ever made? No. I'm gonna say, for a werewolf film, this is certainly above average. I mean, from the ones that I've seen. There's very few werewolf films out there that are even really that good. I would name An American Wolf of London being one, The Howling being one, but then again, The Howling dropped about 7 or 8 turds called sequels. I'll say this, with all these horror video games out there right now, this would actually be a good addition. This movie could and should get the video game treatment. Alright, so this has been a review of the werewolf movie Silver Bullet. Until next time, howl at the moon.